order.
We are on.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda as presented?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to add under other business, pink quartzite stone storage, if I may, please.
Okay.
That'll be information.
Info. Okay.
Mr. Chair, with that addition, I would move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Next up, we have the approval of the consent agenda, which includes minutes of January 8th meeting, 2019. Approval of the auditor warrants of 1/8/19, 1/11/19, and 1/18/19, as well as approval of the hospital warrants, in the amount of $771,000, $771,563.37.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, next up we have Diane Booker, but she is not here. Do you know if she's on her way down?
I think she should be rolling in a minute.
Okay. So we can give her a moment. Unless, is there any other business that might be quick information that we can cover in the meantime?
Mr. Chairman, recommend let's do the appointment to the radio board.
Okay.
If that's all right.
And that was one we did not set 2 weeks ago when we approved those.
This is actually, I put this in there, Mr. Chairman. This is taking myself off as the alternate member of the RAC, which is the Radio Advisory Committee, and requesting that the board appoint Casey Siebert, EM Director, to that position. She would serve as the alternate, and Mike Heyman is the primary member of that. So they attend the RAC meetings. They meet 6 times a year. Chairman Nath is on the communications board, which is the commissioner's arm of it. So the way they operate up there is both groups meet at the same time so they can get all their business done in one day. So it saves meetings that way. So I'd recommend that Casey be appointed to that position.
I'd move that.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, we have motion second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. I suppose these other, did you want to review the committee assignments too, since we had a minute?
Sure, if you've got a moment. I just put that on the agenda, Mr. Chair, just to go through it one more time to make sure I had everything, and did find a couple that were incorrect. Any other? If you guys took a look at it, did you see anything else on page 1 that needed to be adjusted or changed? I think we had those taken care of pretty well. Page 2, no changes on that.
On page 2, I think you have Alan Vanderluck's name incorrect, isn't it?
An extension?
Yeah,
Is it Vander?
I think so, isn't
Okay.
it?
Well, it's Vader.
Yeah, but you're right.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Page 4, Law Library. I believe that should be Board Chair Hollingsworth on that. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. Didn't see anything else on that one. Then, next page would be 5, Building Committee. I still had Commissioner Hollingsworth. I believe that should be Commissioner Wildermuth on that now. Is that correct?
Correct.
For Building Committee? Okay, got that changed. And that's all I had, unless anyone else had anything. Changes were coming pretty fast and furious last week, so I appreciate the help.
problem. Did anybody else see any corrections or changes?
Okay, I'll make those adjustments.
Do we need action on this probably, or no? Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Diane is here.
Okay. Well, we're ready for you, Dan.
Good morning.
So we would like to do the barrels at the fairgrounds again this year. We thought we had a pretty good turnout, averaged about 20 to 25 in the youth and about 30 in the open. And we'd like to do a barrel series this year, so we were hoping to get maybe a few more people. So we did have a pretty good turnout, and I think we did really well with like keeping up on the fairgrounds, keeping it clean, and cleaning up after ourselves. And
I only heard positive remarks from last year. when you
yeah,
had it.
we had a lot of people say that they love our grounds, so
Mhm.
I think they'll be back.
Looking at,
I don't have any problem with it. I'd make a motion to approve the request to use the fairgrounds,
these dates are all open that she has here. Do you guys know?
to check those with Wayne or
Yep.
Steve.
They're not, the May 18th one is not set in stone yet. The rest of them look like they're pretty good. We ran into a little glitch on our side. So,
Does the fair board have an idea of when the county fair is going to be this year?
I think that's usually the first weekend in August, first
I have
Wednesday.
not heard the date yet, but to be honest.
Looks like there would be opportunity then, or you aren't booked during that time, it looks like.
Yeah,
according
and I
to these
know
dates.
Craig talked to the fair board and to see if we couldn't do one like around the fair time, but it sounds like everything's pretty booked, so.
Sure.
Yeah, it might be something that you could coordinate with the fair sometime too.
At some
A
point in
little
time,
ahead-
yeah.
Planning ahead a little more maybe would be something to draw some people during that event as well, so.
Yeah, that sounds good.
As far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any fee changes as far as using the grounds or anything, so.
Okay.
Okay.
I know Punchy, Scott Crawford said something about he'd like us to do it the same time as like some of their sheep shows or beef shows, because it gave the people something to do,
Sure.
something to watch. So we'll kind of,
Yeah.
If you could have multiple events, that would always draw a bigger crowd for both, really, so it
Right.
might be something to work on.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, county fair is July 31st through August 3rd this year.
Alright, so there's no conflict in dates there, so, Commissioner Coiman didn't have a motion on the table.
Second it.
And a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right,
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Dan Larson, the Director of Minnesota Rural County Caucus. Welcome.
I have gifts.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Dan Larson, Executive Director, Minnesota Rural Counties. We're 32 rural counties, 20-year-old organization last year, so I guess that puts us in our 21st year. Very pleased to be here and to have received the invitation. And this proves to you that Minnesota rural counties will get up early in the morning and drive ice-encrusted highways at our own peril to get here for a 9 o'clock meeting to talk about Minnesota rural counties and your place potentially as a member. So thank you very much, and thank you to Commissioner Johnson for extending the invitation. As I said, 32 rural counties. We like to think of ourselves as the place within AMC where rural counties can go to talk about things that are important to them. We are an affiliate organization to AMC. We take no position at opposing AMC on the Hill. If we do have conflicts, if we do have battles, they happen at AMC. And you know, everybody knows you are as likely to, any issue, let's put it this way, any issue that finds itself in the corridors of the state capitol is likely these days, as likely to split along metro-rural lines as they are along party lines. And so there's a need to talk about and to define rural culture and economy at the state capitol and to opinion leaders, and we're the group that tries to do that. We're not big. The staff consists of me, and I do other work. I'm a lobbyist. But this is a group that, when my history, just very briefly, I'm a journalism major at the University of Minnesota. I worked at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune for 5 years. Then I went and was offered a staff position in the Minnesota Senate. I worked there for 7 years. So I understood both the media side of things and the legislative side of things. And the first group, after stepping out of the Senate, that came to me was a group of 5 rural counties who said, and this is, again, 1994 or 95, we don't know what to do. The state wants to impose a one-size-fits-all wetland law on the entire state. And this is the first wetland conservation and revision to the Conservation Wetland Act. These are 5 counties that I, quite frankly, had to look at the map in terms of where they were. Kitson County, Lake, Pennington, Marshall, Beltrami, Couchiching. And I said, well, who is it that's pushing this? Well, at that time, Governor Carlson, the PCA, the DNR, all the major sportsmen's organizations, and all the major environmental organizations. I said, well, who's supporting it? And they said, well, us 5 counties. I said, well, so far you're not telling me that this is a fair fight. How do you plan on doing it? Well, that's what we looked at you to do. I said, who else doesn't like this? Who else is afraid? He said, there's a lot of rural counties that are afraid of the one-size-fits-all. You know, it's if you're gonna have to mitigate 1 or 3 or 5 to 1 on any development, it's gonna lock down your economic development. So they said, well, there's a lot of other counties. I said, can you get them to join in? So what we did, and I don't know that I do this in my naivety at that point, I said, well, you're going to have to go big on this. Resolutions by as many counties as you can get saying that you will not abide by the Wetland Conservation Act as it's being proposed. And we had the initial 5. I'd used my media to get the background, to get the message out there. The next month we had 7, 10. We ended up with 23 counties that actually did resolutions that stopped the momentum for the one-size-fits-all plan, got people, other groups, to look over the transom to say, what's this little group doing and who are they? And they started joining in, the builders, the realtors, who understood that this issue had already rounded the bend and was going to be the plan as presented. So at that point, 18 months later, we came up with a plan that now is a model, that's a 3-tiered plan on mitigation, recognizing where your pre-settlement wetlands were before, or where your plans were based on pre-settlement wetlands. And it's become a national model. That was the starting point for this group. And the message is, if you don't have an advocacy organization out there talking about what the impacts are to rural counties, then you're going to get rolled. And in this case, it worked. And we've been doing similar work over the course of our 20 years. Every now and again, we get an issue like that that's purely rural metro, and we can pound away on the rural side of it. Just a couple of others. In 2008, when the state gave itself and voted itself a 3/8 cent sales tax increase for the legacy amendment, outdoors, arts, parks, and clean water. There was a $400 million annual revenue stream now that was being initiated, brand new money that was coming into the state every year. And that's the size of a good size state budget deficit every year from 2008 until 2034. So I told the group, there's an angle here and we're going to find it. And when I sat down and saw the parks money being, for lack of a better term, carved out or distributed, allocated, there were two entities at the table, DNR and Metro Parks. And I went back to my leadership and said, well, how would you like to have the funding to create a brand new state-of-the-art regional park and trail system in greater Minnesota that's the equal to no other state or province that I know of in North America and maybe the world? And they said, okay, go do it. So that took 18 months. But we fought toe-to-toe. That was a huge fight, but just metro against rural. And we ended up carving out 20% of that park and trail legacy money every year between 2011 and 2034. That is the equivalent of a decade's worth of funding that rural parks and trails used to get. So every 10 years every year you get the equivalent of a decade's worth of funding in greater Minnesota. Then we set up the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission. And that's everybody probably knows and understands it, but it's designed to have projects percolate up from within a region. And we modeled it after the transportation, the RTP project, or the RTP funding. So that's up and operating now, and you're starting to see the projects that are coming by. I drove by Alexander, through Redwood Falls, through Alexander Ramsey Park. They did some great work there with some money. And I don't know if Casey Jones has got money yet, but it's out there. Rick Anderson was an early, Commissioner Anderson in Lyon County. Before that, he was the parks guy. And he was one of the early people. There were about 5 of us that were the early ones. Rick was one of them, and then he became a commissioner. So there's that. There's another piece that that when the state shut down in 2011, everybody went into a huddle. Republicans on the House side were in control, so they were the ones making the deals, and they came out of that negotiations with an agreement on the Vulnerable Children and Adults Act, and the formula changed. The guy who was a House member, then he's a senator now, Senator Abler out of Anoka, changed the formula without any public input, and we found out about it afterwards. We changed it back to the way it was a year after it was implemented, and it saved a number of rural counties a lot of money. I tried to figure out what we did for you guys, but I think you're in a kind of a consortium. You're in a number of counties on vulnerable children. I couldn't figure it out. So I think we did okay by you guys, but a number of counties were 6 figures annually. So that kind of work this group does. And then on the other side, the routine issues, you're going to see in your packets what we do as priorities. You're going to see a lot of similar work between us and AMC. Well, why do we need rural counties doing this, working on transportation, broadband, the same kind of things? We have a different angle on it. And maybe this is the time to let me close the loop on that. And we'll do a lot. We'll do media, and we'll do op-eds and say just on the broadband piece, we developed we wanted to personalize what the impacts were to people who were without, in the dark. We call it the dark side of the moon. And so every week, legislators got a personal profile of somebody who was underserved or unserved. And with a picture and a thing, and it's in there, you'll see it. So those are the kind of things we do. We give the rural perspective. We very much appreciate over the time, Commissioner Johnson has attended a number of our meetings. And I don't know if it's because we twisted his arm so much or he's tired of getting banged on by us, but we got this invitation. So we appreciate it. Maybe you think it's a good organization. On the side of the goodness here, I hope that's it. But we need membership. We need broad participation, and our membership has grown. Maybe this is the time, first of all, you got a letter from our board chair, Paul Jurdy. He's at his own board meeting today. If you look on the other side, this is our membership. And we started along the northern third. Our growth then was on the western side, and our newest membership is coming in your region. Cottonwood, Watonwan, you see where we're growing. So we're putting emphasis in this region, and we'd love you to be a part of our organization. We need you to be a part of our organization.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. That actually kind of shores up one of the questions I did have, and when I asked early on when I came on the board and asked other commissioners from other counties about what is the Minnesota Rural Caucus all about, and some of them said, well, it's a waste of our time in this area because they're only going to represent the northern counties, the northern rural counties, with all the lakes and all the forests and this and that. And that was one of the only negatives I've heard on that. But to see other counties in the area joining, I'm a little more curious now. What can you do to address that issue that I've heard from the other counties, though, that seems like only the northern ones get representation and the southern ones not as much?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, not sure where that came from. This is an organization where issues come up, they percolate up, and everybody gets a chance to put their ideas on the table for the priorities that we choose every year. So it's not the case. It's just that whoever told you that spoke in error.
Well, that's why I figured I better ask you the question, too, because I was curious about that comment. So
very good.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions for Mr. Larson?
Have you defined your priorities for this year yet?
We have. They're just underneath the chairman's letter. So I'll go through them real quick. Transportation funding is always on our list. Rural broadband. Enbridge and the Department of Revenue, the evaluations that they've imposed. They also included dark store issues there. A provision allowing counties authority on ditches, that they are ditch authorities on, that came from our Wright County member and widely supported by our group. Extending the 2% provider tax, small county relief from the 2020 requirement for trained chemical assessors. Those are the priorities. The watch list, this issue of, again, getting back to the legacy, it was a great gift that the state gave itself, taxpayers, but there are unintended consequences, and nobody's really talking about this except AMC and rural counties. Public money, private lands. So there's, beginning from the last few years, 4 or 5 years really, frustrations emerging from rural counties, hearing from commissioners, hearing from their members who said, you know, I had my eye on this 40, and for a lot of years it was in my plans to pick it up. Come to find that state money has, it was awarded a grant and purchased through one of the non-government organizations, and for a price that I never would have paid, nobody in this area would have paid, and now it's off limits to me, it's off limits to anybody. It's not going to be producing any land. You get PILT land, you get PILT payments on it, and on top of everything else, it's elevated the comparables for other land that I may have on my list, because they paid a price that nobody locally would have paid. So that's an issue that we're starting to work on, and I'll have to tell you, I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. AMC was taking care of it. They had a summit meeting with the NGOs on this issue in the spring, and I've got a work group, 3 individuals. Randy Kramer's one of them from Renville County. Everybody knows him. And then Neil Peterson is on the Bowser board out of Pennington County, and then my chair, Paul Jurdy, and then one other, Doug Kruger out of McLeod County. Good lands people, they know what they're talking about. They participated in this meeting, came out of it frustrated. The issues were we need notification of when a grant application is being requested in our county. We want to know as early as possible, and then we want to be able to talk about it. All the issues weren't addressed. I don't want to be.
Another example of that would be with some of these solar projects that are coming in, where they're heavily subsidized with state money, and say they're offering $800 to $1,000 an acre per year rent to have a lease for a solar garden, which is obviously some multiple of what cash rent would be for farming. And to me, it seems outrageous that you can use public money to overpay, some multiple of what cash rent typically would be in your area, just to establish well, it's an okay energy production source. However, it shouldn't be squandering state resources that way, in my opinion, but I know that there's local examples in southwest Minnesota where that's happening. And I know they were potentially looking at one west of town here that I had heard complaints from several residents. I mean, I don't know that one's going to develop, but there certainly are ones, I think, in Jackson County and some other counties near us.
There are a lot of solar gardens all over. If you drive around the state, there's quite a few.
Right, I realize that, but I mean, not all of them, I don't think, have such outrageous rental arrangements.
What's the cost to belong to MRC? Is there a fixed rate, or do you go by population, or how do you determine that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, both of those. We raised our rates last year for the first time at the 20th anniversary. We went from 21, and it's based on population. So you guys are 10,000 or below in population, am I correct in that? Mm-hmm. Okay. $2,200 annually. Just to close the loop on this land use thing, so we put our mind to it and said, okay, well, how do you fix this? And one of the sticky things was you guys don't want to get in between a seller and a buyer in terms of a land sale. Nobody wants to be in that spot. So that's an important piece also. So we're floating something now. I ran it by the board. I ran it by my land use group that says, hey, if you guys want to make a difference, then go be at the table. Sit down and pay somebody to be at the table. You get real-time information on grant applications in your county. It goes out just like that. You get a chance then to sit at the table and say, wait a minute, that doesn't make as much sense as this piece over here. And then you take that a step further and build your own projects. You get at the table. Say, okay, well, let's talk about Pipestone County. Let's talk about this region. Let's talk about the $115 million annually that's running through really about 6 or 7 organizations, DU, PF, Nature Conservancy, a couple of others. First of all, there's frustration at the commission level that the same groups are coming through. They want diversity. They want counties. They want you there. Secondly, I've got sportsmen that hunt pheasant that are tired of driving to South Dakota to hunt their pheasants. Why can't we take money and get a consortium, get a cooperative, get a joint powers board of 8 or 9 counties in the Southwest and pump money into pheasant habitat, and you become the destination for hunters, and you get the economic development off of that. At the same time, you're at the table saying these are bad projects, we might have a better one for you. I can't do anything about getting between a seller and a buyer, but it at least lets you, on the margins, mitigate that a little bit. And you're at the table. So nobody's bought in yet. They told me come back with options, and my options are going to be AMC can staff it. Well, I'm talking to Julie about that. That's going to be a tough thing. Down to the other side is hire somebody, pay them some money, and get somebody there. And the model I'll use is the one we set up for Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails. Break the state into 6 regions, non-metro, and and then have projects come up. Just like the RTP. Sorry, I got off on a little tangent, but, you know, when we're doing something, I want to make sure you guys know what we're doing. We got to hustle. This group has to hustle, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Mr. Larson, you said that you were a lobbyist previously. Do you still lobby for other entities, or are you 100% for?
I do.
Okay. Does that ever create a conflict between your other clients and what we're doing for MRC?
Not in 21 years.
Okay. How big a staff do you have at MRC?
Well, it's me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said our fee would be $2,200. As the coalition grows, or the caucus grows, then do you see with that being spread out more, that our cost would go down, or is this going to be a fixed cost, or is it going to go up as prices increase? What do you predict?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, my guess would be, we haven't addressed that. First of all, we'd love to have the problem of being too big and too many. We haven't had that yet. There's a lot of things that we'd like to do. So the answer to your question is we haven't addressed it, but we want to grow, and we'll have plans for those additional dollars. We got a web page, doesn't work that well. We've got some higher priority things that we could really do some work on in terms of identifying what is rural. Nobody's wrote that book yet. What is rural? How do you define to somebody in North St. Paul, a legislator who may run a committee who's going to decide whether your project is in or out of their bill, you know, what the importance is of you know, we went through buffer strips and all that stuff, just anything rural. And we don't have that. So what we started to do, and I'm sorry if I'm answering too much, but what we started to do with our last 3 meetings, Commissioner Johnson attended at least 1 or 2 of them, is to identify what the key cornerstones in terms of business and organizations was in Greater Minnesota. So we ran mining, agriculture, broadband, solar, wind, just any number of things through these last 3 meetings. And then one of the things you'll see in here is I wrote it up, and that's this one. I don't know if they could have got a little closer on that picture or not, but so I wrote it up and said, you know, these are the things that we're working. While legislators, it was prior to the election, while legislators they come to us once every other year in Greater Minnesota and ask us how we're doing. It's not really true, it's unfair, but I think the message, the angle was, and now that they're listening, let's make sure that we tell them. And so that's, we kind of laid that out in that piece. We've done others on transportation, on broadband. And so this is the kind of thing you're going to see from us. And just on the broadband, below that piece, and that ran in the Grand Forks Herald, but we ran in a number of other places. But this is the broadband piece. And so this is actually a Wilkin County commissioner, and who does an aerial applicator service. And he doesn't have fiber in the ground, and he depends on, I think, line of sight or maybe even satellite. And so when the clouds come over, he loses track of where his planes are and the weather. And so these are the kind of things that we point out.
Mr. Chair, also then, what would our commitment be to you other than the financial commitment? What type of time commitment? You meet at AMC and other times as well, or is it just twice a year?
That's a good question, and I think we put the calendar in here, did we not? I don't see the calendar. Okay, okay, so the staff is going to get a good talking to. We should have put that calendar in there. I'm the staff, right? So, yeah. So, on that question, I wish I could show you. I know I printed them out. What we want to recognize that the demands on your time for this part-time job are endless. The travel, because we're statewide now, is difficult. So what we do is piggyback on every AMC statewide meeting, fall conference, winter, and then our next one will be in February in St. Paul. So we do it ahead of those meetings. So those three, we have 8 or 9 meetings a year. During the legislative session, we'll meet electronically by interactive television, and we're starting to break that down now to get into things like Skype and so that it make it even easier. And then we'll have 3 meetings that our members get together. They want to see each other. They want to get together at least 3 times, and that is in January for the organizing meeting, at the end of session in June, and then that's it. I was counting the September meeting, but that's a pre-AMC meeting. So those 2 meetings. And then we ask you to drive, but we also make those available electronically.
Thank you.
So again, as we grow then, do you anticipate, as the group grows, MRC, do you anticipate bringing on more staff? My concern is I don't want to appear as though that we're hiring you strictly as a lobbyist, that this actually is a consortium.
That would be up to the group. At this point, dues are going to hire somebody else. The money's not there. So we're going to have to hire a lot more people at this rate. Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you. How come you have it and I don't? Did I nail it? Okay. So a delegate and an alternate would be appointed, should you decide to join up. You would tell me who the delegate is, who the alternate is. It's okay if all of you want to be alternates. You all get the stuff then, which I like. It keeps you all informed.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions for Mr. Larson today?
I don't think so. I guess I'd like to think about this a little bit, take it as information at this point, and
And table it.
just a little time to think about it.
Revisit another week.
That's my feeling.
What's the desires of the rest of the group to want to weigh it?
I don't know, I think, it's something that we should probably consider. I mean, I think we see it all the time that the challenges between metro and rural is, continually there. I think we're in a situation now where there's so many new legislators that need to be just educated about what rural needs are. I mean, all the new, well, not all, but I would say a vast majority of the new representatives in particular are suburban, 7-county metro, that have no clue what we do outside the metro area. And it certainly can't hurt to have somebody, speaking on our behalf to those people that we never get to see for the most part. And I will say, from attending some of the Minnesota rural county meetings in the past, that I really appreciate when you've had like the legislative panels at some of those meetings where people are able to interact with legislators from areas outside their own, because it's probably the only chance they ever get. Even if they have a legislative, meet and greet at the Capitol, they typically only talk to their own local people, because they don't know the others.
Right.
And I've always thought, I wish AMC would do more of that, frankly, that it's very nice to be able to interact with, sometimes party leaders or, leaders of committees or whatever that you otherwise wouldn't know because they're not from your area.
Dan, how much of your time throughout the year is dedicated then to this caucus?
Well, thank you for asking that, Commissioner Chair. Over time, I used to have a lot more clients than I have right now. I have winnowed that back. I have 2 primary clients right now, and I do some PR work on the side. So this is the cornerstone organization that I work with. I also work with a group that, it's a fun group. They want to have more access for Jeeps in the woods. We're building trails and stuff. It's fun. And that's the next wave, by the way, touring Jeeps. You heard it here first. And,
The woods.
yeah, Jeeps in the woods. So, I'd say 85% of my time is Minnesota rural counties. Because what you guys work on are as wide as an ocean and just as deep. I could do 120% just on county stuff.
Thank you.
In terms of legislators, if I could point out one thing, that divide is real. Nobody doesn't know that, and it's getting over time. I've heard this since I was a staffer in the '90s. Rural is the worm has turned for rural. It's going to be, you better get what they give you today, because tomorrow it's going to be different. Well, I've been waiting for that shoe to drop for 21 years now or more. And what's happened, just go back to this dogfight that we had on park and trail money, where the Metro, 19 lobbyists, 19 well-heeled lobbyists that advocated for Metro organizations. And it was myself, Rick Anderson, 3 or 4 others. But what did it for us was we had committee chairs in the right spot. Senator Ingebrigtsen was the Natural Resource Finance Chair, and Commissioner Wildermuth, just to answer a question in terms of, I'm sorry, it was you, Mr. Chair, only on the northern focus. Our last 4 chairs, two of them in successive years, Douglas County and Pope County. So we're really a West Central-led organization in recent months. But we were able to work with, and still are able to work with legislators in key positions. And that's been the key right now. Senator Bach, Senator Thomas Soni, Senator Ingebrigtsen. And so so we're still able to have an effect. But the numbers are changing, and Commissioner Johnson mentioned it. The election turned in the suburbs this year. And so you've got a group in St. Paul advocating, and we're it, and we need to be stronger. We need your voice in our group.
Thank you.
It's not just in the suburbs. Actually, the governor and Tina Smith Senate race both were carried by Hennepin and Ramsey County. I mean, in just those 2 counties alone, it was over 300,000 plus votes DFL. In the rest of the state, the Republican candidates had a 60-some thousand advantage. They had 2 counties with 68 and 75% of the vote carried Tim Walz and Tina Smith to victory. That's pretty strong, metro pull when 2 counties can carry the state.
Mr. Chair, you could extrapolate that to the Attorney General and all the statewide races.
That's true. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have any more comments or questions for Mr.
I guess
Weston?
I'd make a motion that I think we should consider moving forward with this.
Just consider it to actually
Join.
to move forward.
Yeah.
Join. Okay. Okay. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Was the motion to consider or to do it?
To do it.
Is there a second? Is there a second? I'll second it for the sake of discussion then. And open it up discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I concur with Bruce's approach on this. I certainly like what you presented, and I do like what we're looking at here, but I would feel more comfortable if we did do a little more research before we commit to it. So I am in favor of this, but I'm not ready to commit at this time. You mentioned Rick Anderson a couple different times, and I see that Lyon County is not part of the consortium. That's the question I would have. Rick is such an advocate, and we all know Rick very well. I would like to visit with some other people again as well too. So
I have the same question with Rick.
Well, you're talking about $2,200, but you're also talking about another couple $1,000s in per diems and mileage to go to events to go along with this, so you're really talking about $4,000 to $5,000.
I guess I didn't think it'd be that much where they only meet twice outside of AMC. AMC would be going there anyway.
Yeah, but we don't know, but yeah, it could be. So, yeah.
The reason, on the Commissioner Anderson, we just haven't asked him yet.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor of joining MRC signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
Aye.
All right, motion fails. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Larson.
Mr. Chair and members, I thought I heard you want to hear more from us. Is that still on the table? I wouldn't want this to be a pejorative vote. Okay if I keep talking to you about who we are? And
Well, I think at the,
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. I think it's very interesting. I do think it's something we probably should pursue. I'm just not ready to commit today.
And frankly, I think we should talk to some of the counties around us because, maybe more of them should be interested as well.
and like with the comments I had received too, maybe it was slanted response that I had too. I'd like to get a little more information too, especially the counties that are participating too, so.
very good.
I think at this, do you guys have more questions for Mr. Larson? Otherwise,
When would be a good time to have Mr. Larson come back down again? Or, we don't want to impose on you with another trip, but to get more information, you want to send us some
Work that out
emails?
at some point in the future.
What if I do this? I'll have a couple of our members who are close, Cottonwood County,
Redwood or Cottonwood.
I'll have them do some outreach.
that'd be great.
Because we do network a great deal with our neighboring counties, and we respect their opinion as well, too.
Okay.
Wasn't Brown with you before?
No,
No, they weren't.
no, they said they were, and then we visited with them a couple times.
Okay, huh.
There's a number of counties that, we get the nod from, and then it's all about that last 10 yards.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you. And
Thank you.
all right, that concludes our regular agenda items. Moving on to other business. Personnel, Kathy, do you have anything?
Good morning.
morning.
Steve did just pass around a sample ad for an appraiser. So that is my request this morning. I believe Joyce did speak with the board during her budget work sessions about adding an appraiser for this year. And so this is a formal request to add a position to her department. And we would be looking at advertising, soon, assuming it's approved, and getting someone in here probably March or April, before they start their busy appraisal season for the year. So that is my request today.
So these pay rates for the junior and senior, those are contingent upon experience then?
Correct.
Okay.
We don't expect to find anyone that's licensed, but we have those in there if they are. Typically, though, they would start at the bottom rate there listed with no experience, so.
And I'm not sure if you have that information or not, but this was included in Joyce's budget, if I remember right?
Yes, yes, it was. I think it's budgeted at the junior appraiser level, though, so just so you're aware of that.
And then the training costs are budgeted as well?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, well, thanks, Kathy. At this time, I'll open up the board for decision.
You need a motion to approve and move forward with this, or is this?
Yes.
Correct, we would need a motion to add this position to the assessor's office.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we do include this position with our appraiser's office.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have museum fourth quarter report action. Is there anybody presenting, Steve, or is that
Mr.
just?
Chairman, this is just the written report for your review.
Okay.
Only motion on would be to accept the report as presented by Susan Hoskins from the museum.
I did get a chance to go through it a little bit. Didn't seem like all the information was quite there, just topics, but what I seen was pretty good. Anybody else have any other changes or notice anything you want to discuss? Yeah, at this time I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, who made the motion? Lou,
Commissioner
thank you.
Johnson.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have the fourth quarter budget report. Steve?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, this is through the end of 2018, so it takes us through the end of the year. Went through the reports. We had 27 different budgets that came in less than 100%. We had 4 budgets that came slightly over 100%, and at 100%, and 10 were just slightly over 100%. All in all, the budget was very well done. Your department heads that we have, our department heads, we did a very good job on their budgeting and their expenses and their incomes through for 2018. So it was very good. Just going through a few of them that were lower. 283 EMS came in at 71% of the budget. They came in very well at 81% of projected revenues at $405,000 out of $500, considering they went through a change to collections being done through transmedic billing. It turned out to be a very good year. Score Recycling came in at 57% of their total. Community Health, of course, was right at 100%. Culture and Rec at 98%. Library, those are all funded through the budget process, and those don't change much at all. But all in all, just going through most of these, very well done. County revenue ended up with a surplus or a credit balance of $391,671, or revenues in county and total county revenue were 103% of revenues, and expenditures were 98%. So it was a very good year. You had very good budgeting, very good controls by your department heads, and they did a very good job this year.
That was impressive numbers.
It was very nice. Road and Bridge did very well. Their revenues were $6,647,716. They expended $6,315,476, and they ended up with a $332,000 credit as well in there. So going through their individual one for road and bridge construction, I presume there's some monies from the state that aren't there yet, because they were their expenses were 313%, so it's a matter of when those monies come back to the county. So I'm sure we'll be seeing some of those funds come funneling through this quarter yet this year. But all in all, I would commend the department heads and board, and everybody did a very good job on the budget. This is outstanding. It's really good.
Well, thank you.
Just a comment on where the Road and Bridge Fund had such a positive balance, possibly at the Road and Bridge meeting coming up, do we want to discuss possibly designating some of that to start a Road and Bridge Fund, so that we're actually, have a beginning on funding road projects?
That'd be a good conversation to have with Engineer Bergman on that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Be open to bringing that up at the meeting.
It's not saying that this money isn't earmarked for something else
I
too.
understand.
So that,
I know
we're still
we
paying
had
bills from
talked in
last
the
year.
past,
too.
like if they're, we'd see how things were at year end and then
Mm-hmm.
make a decision, so.
Well, you might have to look at his 5-year
Right.
outlook, and the new project potentially out east of Pipestone here could be something
Right.
coming up in a few years. He may have some other areas too where they're.
Right, but regardless of what the project
Fund will
is,
go
you
the
still
other
gotta
direction
have
real quick,
funds,
too,
so
But
nice to start having something.
it's nice to have it at least on an even keel here, so.
Mr. Chair, what do we also need to get an opinion from Auditor Treasurer Tyler Reich on this? How does that work if there's if we don't use the full amount of that budget, is that money, can it be carried over to the following year, or that's just money that we stayed
Into
below?
reserves for general revenue.
Goes into the general, so.
Yeah.
Get input from you.
I think Commissioner Johnson's point is rather than put it back into general revenue, put it into a specific fund.
Yeah,
for
Road and Bridge needs to stay in Road and Bridge. We can't
Right.
bounce it between funds.
Designate them.
You can still
funds.
designate it, and you can always use it for something else if you have to, but
It just shows up as, excess money that we use for other things, goes back into revenue.
Okay.
But it's a very good year. Very, very pleased.
Does anybody else have any more questions for Steve? Okay, well, thank you. Okay, moving ahead, Caring Hands Dental update, approval agreement, use of legal, or use contract to legal services.
Mr. Chair, board members, a couple things on this I'd like to go over. First of all, I would like to see a couple of board members on a committee working with this with me. I don't know if we should take it out of, recommend take it out of buildings and plant, if that's where we want to do it, or have specific, but I would like some more board activity on this as we move forward on here. There's a lot of moving parts on here, and I think it just needs some expertise from board members as well, so you are aware of what's all going on here. Really, it was never set up as a committee or anything as we went forward. It was just kind of ad hoc, put it into buildings and plant. If the wishes of the board to continue that, I'm fine with that. But I just want to have an avenue to bounce things off that are coming into me that I think you should be aware of so that we can bring them back here. Just not totally comfortable doing it all on my own. I think that we do need some of your knowledge there as well.
Mr. Chair, couldn't the Building and Grounds Committee this shouldn't be a big time-consuming thing, because
Right.
it's actually gonna be paid for by Caring Hands. I don't know why we would need to get more involved in it with more time and more, especially at this point, we don't even know if it's going forward at this point.
Right. Yep.
Mr. Waldemar?
I certainly would be willing to work on that, and as part of building and grounds, that would be fine as well, too.
And that's how we've done it before.
Building and Grounds now, isn't it
Less than Dan.
Less than Dan?
Right, yeah, so.
And that's how
If
we've,
there's something other than that, they could always,
Well, it'll come back to the board for
Right,
action,
right.
but that'll work fine. I appreciate that.
then we don't have to
That would
change
be
committee
great.
assignments.
Yeah, sounding board is really,
Mr. Chair, I have a question about this second paragraph where it said Caring Hands may be partly responsible for payment. I would like to put Caring Hands will be the party responsible. If we can change that wording, I don't know if that's a possibility, but to me, I don't want to, I personally wouldn't pay anybody $455 an hour to do anything. Other than maybe brain surgery or something like that. These people, we're just giving them a blank check here, and I
no,
don't.
well, no, we're not, Mr. Chair, or board members. What this is we need to have what's called a use agreement before we can even get the grant money. So what this is this has to be done, it's a legal binding document between Pipestone County and the state of Minnesota, MMB and deed, so that we can accept and use their $500,000 to build this building that Pipestone County will own and be responsible for the next 40 years. Okay? So we have to do this right. This isn't something that I can just sit down and do. I ran this by County Attorney Sandy, and he recommended, no, this is not up my alley. He says we need to get somebody that can do it. Where this company came from is I talked to counterpart Tom Johnson down in Nobles County. They have used Dorsey Whitney for some of their deed projects they've had down there. He said they're not cheap, but they're very good. And if you want me to find somebody cheap, can do it. But I did chat with these folks up at the AMC conference, and they're willing to do it. And their total costs were they're estimating between $6,000 and $8,000 for this to do, for this use agreement to come up. Now, there may be other agreements that have to come up between the county and Caring Hands Dental about how this is going to work, but this is what we need to have laid out in writing and a legal document so that the state knows exactly what we're going to do with Caring Hands on this project. And Mr. Koyman is exactly right. We don't know where we're going to be as far as the bids are for the building. We haven't seen those yet. The architects are still working on that. So we do have costs involved. This will be Pipestone County's building if this moves ahead. So we do have a responsibility to make sure that we do this legally and correctly. So this doesn't become Caring Hands building. We will own this. And it's very clear on the deed in MMB that, you know, we have these agreements in place. Otherwise, the 500,000 grant will not happen too. So then the project won't happen either. So we got to work this through to get to the next step. And I did let Al know that I would be requesting 50% of the cost of this. He emailed back and said he would like to see other people tried. He tried to get a real estate attorney up there, and they wouldn't even touch it either. So this
he
is
committed
uncharted
to
waters
paying?
for us. I'm sorry?
Is he committed to paying?
He's not committed to paying. But I've asked him to pay.
Right, but shouldn't he be?
Doesn't know how much it costs yet. We don't, I told him where we're at so far, between $6,000 and $8,000 to have this agreement put together for the county and Caring Hands.
Mr. Chairman, in my feeling, if he isn't willing to commit, we're putting ourselves out here too. If he's
Oh,
willing to commit for at least 50% of it, I would think he should pay for all of it. But
Well, this,
he's the one that brought this to us. And
agreed.
he's the promoter and the person, for some reason, if he's going to benefit, probably he will financially. But I don't think we should go ahead if he isn't willing to put some skin in the game here. But that's just me. I'm not the board, so.
I can't remember if I remember this correctly or not, but I thought all those fees were, Mr. Olson was carrying.
Architect's fees were in it for $100,000, but again, this
This is over and
This
above.
is over and above, and this building becomes our property regardless of what happens in the future with Caring Hands if this is built. If he does this for 10 years and something changes and he decides to not have it, we will still own the building. So we'll still be responsible for it and put something else in it. So the building does not become his. He will never own this building. So we can't have a standard lease agreement because of the nature of the nonprofit use of the building. So that's why we have to come up with a very specifically use agreement, and Minnesota Management Budget and Deed have a very specific checkoff sheet that everything must be done, and it is a legal document and is filed. And, we will still run this agreement. We'll still be able to collect our monies from him over monthly periods for what he's going to be paying us back for the site preparation. That we have up to $100,000 in that.
If in fact it's built.
In fact, it's built,
We're just
right.
out in the weeds here.
Right. So,
Is it possible to at least have a not to exceed clause in this? I mean,
It's a fair question.
so it's not just a blank check for,
Right, right.
it's how many hours they're gonna put into it, that's all I can tell, but I can ask them if we can do a not to exceed.
yeah, maybe check with them and,
Yeah.
and, and
with Al.
frankly, like Bruce said, if you can change that portion about Caring Hands may be responsible for payment to, Will, it wouldn't be all bad either.
Yeah, that would be up to us. And when we were doing the initial conversation, that was my comment, that I said they may be responsible for this, because hadn't talked to the board yet, so it's
Right.
like,
Sure.
where we want
Being
to be.
critical of the way it's written. I
Yeah,
just
no, it's
would
just-
feel better, because the way it was presented to us, it's supposed to be budget neutral for the county.
Right.
Other than the $100,000 we're gonna put in and donate the property
Yeah.
to the project, and beyond that, as far as I'm concerned, he can step up to the plate and pick up the tab. I mean, it's a deal. I don't know.
So
I
the
think
thought,
the county's already making quite a
Quite a
step
commitment,
as far as what we're willing to do, plus we're gonna have to finance the thing as it goes along.
right?
So, yeah. It's just the beginning. We haven't even started yet.
Yeah, there's no ground.
Probably gonna be more of these issues.
Well, and how much time has Steve spent on it already, doing paperwork? I mean, probably a tremendous.
Some people will be working on it, and the county people will no doubt be involved in it, the highway department, with some dirt moving and so on.
Yeah.
So there's a
Well,
lot of
we'll
work to be
also,
done here, so.
another part of it's not even up yet, we will have site development engineering costs too, because we have to have a survey done and all of that.
That'll be in the
That's-
100,000 that we're talking about.
That's part of our,
That's
should be part of our
thing, too. So, I
100,000
mean,
for the
we're-
site development, that's what we site prep is what we put on there.
These
so.
are all fees that will be recovered through the lease
If
agreement,
it's-
through
if
the
it's-
payment throughout the
Through
year.
the
It's not
use
lease
agreement.
agreement,
Survives
use
that
agreement, not
long,
lease
yeah.
agreement.
And then we may have to sit down and have a little negotiating period with Mr. Olson as well with this. So that's again why I wanted members of the board on here as well as we start working on these things.
So the thoughts of the board at this time are to bounce this back, to see if we can get this literature change here, and then possibly a agreement that, not to exceed agreement.
Right.
Okay. So we'll not take action on this today, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Any other comments on the matter? Okay, thank you.
The second part of this, along with that, is the paperwork that I did submit to MMB. They reviewed it, and they found that we are sufficient evidence for full funding. So that part is done. So the use agreement is step 2
Gotcha.
to get the funding. So that's why we have to, everything's a step at a time. So
So how much of the grant do you think will be consumed by just the paperwork and,
none. The grant is for construction only.
oh, it is?
Yeah, it's a construction grant. It does not cover any
Material and
paperwork.
labor.
Yep.
So
Okay.
more than likely, the county will have to bill the state or communicate with the state each time we get behind in paying for it, and they'll reimburse
Yeah.
us. They weren't just gonna give us a check for $500,000.
No, we want to set it up as a pay-as-you-go, much like we're paying DRC for the demolition of the school, monthly bill, monthly payment,
Right.
just like we do with other building
Bit of
projects.
Time and effort involved in Steve and Tyler and everybody.
Yeah.
The county
We're not going to get reimbursed for our time on this.
So that, in a sense, then, is in addition to the 100,000?
It is, because.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
500,000 is the amount that we're getting from deed for the construction of the building.
Okay.
Just, so like, no, there is good news on here too.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, I'll continue working on that.
Anybody else?
Appreciate that.
Other comments? Okay.
Uh,
All right.
Quartzite's the only other thing I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's move on to that.
Talked with Jeff Jones on Friday, and he mentioned that to me that the city council will be meeting to talk about storage of pink quartzite stone from the school at tonight's city council meeting. Apparently some issues came up with that, of their ability or want to store it. So they're going to talk about that at a full meeting tonight. I just took it on my own to get a hold of Engineer Bergman to see if he had a place we could store stone, and he says, yes, we do. We have lots of space if we want to take it out to the old landfill site where they have the shooting range and all that, that if we wanted to take some out there and store it, he says there's plenty of space to do it out there too. You have a little more distance, it wouldn't be within the city of Pipestone, but we do have, it is county property, so we do have the ability to move and store stone out there. He was very willing to accept that out there.
And Steve, would this stone then be considered county property then, if we take it back, so to speak, and put it there? Because I've seen a lot of chatter on people on coast to coast in this country that wants that stone.
Yeah, if we're gonna store it, we're gonna be responsible for it, and I'm not speaking for you, but in my opinion, the stone isn't for souvenirs or anything like that. The purpose of the idea was to have stone around for possibly some sort of a monument, and Commissioner Wildermuth can speak more to that too, or to help if a building were damaged due to construction or some sort of failure and that needed pink quartzite to build part of it or fix something, or a sign or something like that, we'd have that available.
Some of it for a sign out here.
Yeah.
Wanted a sign, like
Exactly.
County Court, similar to what we've got.
Right.
I mean, those kind of uses might be something.
My thoughts were,
Memorial group, they were interested in some too.
my thoughts were, since it was originally part of a earlier school that caught on fire and was rebuilt as a school during World War II or whatever, they're in time of need, that they took any resource they could get. I mean, we're facing a similar situation with elementary school now, and that's going to go to a vote. And well, maybe surplus stone could help defer some cost on that, and then still stay as a school. I don't know. That was just my personal thought, but obviously a lot of people have different opinions on the matter.
Stone basically belongs to the person now that's tearing the building down.
Yes, it does.
He's gifting it back.
But who's gonna transport it to the site?
Initially, he had offered to do the transportation. That was to a city site, when it was located within the city. So,
Well, it would benefit him a little bit. He wouldn't have to grind that up or dump it somewhere else.
It's one of the hardest.
Haul it further.
I don't know what, I don't think the
Yeah,
county
that's
wants
what, probably an 8-mile haul.
Yeah,
10.
I mean, if we're gonna store it, it should be our property then.
Well, that's kept locked up, is it not? There's a
Right,
padlock
it's
on the
locked.
gate and all that out there, so other than that, I don't know what else you can do with it.
I don't know. I look at it as one of the hardest quality stones you can find, and it's been exposed to the elements for 100 years plus now, and it's still in flawless condition. It's a great material for
yeah, it's not gonna hurt it by storing it for the next 20, 30 years or whatever it takes.
No.
If it's ever needed or whatever.
It's also getting more and more difficult to mine that or quarry that type of stone because of the craftsmanship that went into it. You just don't, it's not as available as it was 100 years ago. So I think it's very, very important for us to salvage as much of this as we can.
But first, we have to see what the city decides on the matter. Right. So,
If they wanna store it, great. If they don't, we have an option. That's my point.
As long as they'll transport it and it doesn't cost us any additional.
I guess I don't have a problem if they want to put it out there and use it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have to come to Steve if they
Yep.
can get somebody that wants to use it for a civic type project here of some sort. You know, I don't know who would control that or who would determine the uses that it could be used for. We don't, I guess, I don't really care what they do with it, but maybe the Building and Grounds Committee should also be in touch with that a little bit, and that's kind of what it is. Let's
Take the request and cancel them.
stamp them.
well,
Well, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of
And-
people coming forward wanting one rock
oh,
or
yeah.
something.
Oh, there's thousands of people that want that
And
already.
that's not gonna
That's-
happen.
That's,
Some of them will just climb the fence and go out there and take a rock or two, too.
And that will happen. There's people that are adamant that that's what they will do to get it.
If they're big enough chunks, they won't.
yeah,
No,
we're gonna
exactly.
have a hard time hauling this away, I think. You know,
It's in Luke's
Put it way in the
territory,
back,
so
they got a long ways to go.
Luke could keep an eye on it out there.
I don't know. I'd just like to see it stored. If the city can't decide what to do with it, it'd be a shame, in my opinion, that this high-quality product just get thrown aside. That has, historical ties to this city. I think it'd be a shame.
as
Anyhow,
far as souvenir seekers should go, I noticed that Kyle did a nice job putting Mr. Repman's phone number in the paper, so if they want a brick or something, they should, souvenirs, they need to contact him, not the county on that, or the city on that, because he owns the brick, he owns the building out there, and that's over here, and that's up to him what he does with it.
thanks.
Did that clear that up, Kyle, a little bit?
As mine.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud.
All right.
Point is, we got a place to store stone if we need to.
Sure.
Well, there's plenty of room out there, and it's not being used.
Oh, yeah, no,
So
it's-
that's not a big issue.
No.
Getting it there and getting it back.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Anybody else have any further comment on the topic? Nope. Any other business coming before the board today?
Move to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
A motion second, further discussion. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Stand adjourned. Thank you.